The sounds of spring. Hungry mouths. A lover's duet. Defensive chatter. Plaintive cries. And a secret, mischievous chuckle. Are you listening closely? It's Springwatch.
Hello, I say.
Yes, that was a spring. I'm springing into Springwatch.
Look out, darling, you might strain something. Hello, welcome to Springwatch 2023. End of week 2 here at the beautiful RSPB Reserve at Arn. Now, we have an extraordinary programme for you tonight because from this point onwards, there will be no music in our programme. And I'm sure that will bring music to some of your ears. So you've heard the title music there, nothing more until the credits roll, just the sounds of nature. So let's go back to our pre-title sequence. What did you call it?
It was a secret, mischievous chuckle.
Let's hear it. A secret, mischievous chuckle. And I bet you can't guess what that is. It's the chuckle call of a cuckoo, and it's produced by a female cuckoo when it's just laid an egg into its host's nest. And the theory behind that call is that it's mimicking the call of a raptor, perhaps a sparrowhawk, and it instills a reaction in the host. It basically unsettles them. It distracts them from the fact that they've just been parasitized, and they're less likely to pay attention to the fact that the cuckoo's egg is in the nest. Well, that's the theory, but it's a highly unusual call. I've got to say, I've never heard it myself.
Well, I suppose we're used to hearing the cuckoo, cuckoo.
Brilliant impersonation, but you're right.
I would go on to the Sound of Music song,
Don't.
but we've got no music tonight, so you're saved. Now, we're going to be checking on our live nest in just a minute, but let's check in with Mark Yates, who's our long lens cameraman, who's out on the Arn Reserve, getting us this rather tranquil shot of waders on the water. Now, I want you to look at that. It's lowering your blood pressure, it's lowering your anxiety levels, and I want you to hold on to that. I want you to breathe it in and to store it, because you might need that little bit of calm when you hear our update, because let me tell you, there's been a few surprises over the last 24 hours.
As ever, drama.
Yes.
Let's go to our live nest now. We've got a fine array of these. Last night we started with the nightjar. Let's do so again. We can go to it live now. There's our female nightjar, resting, same spot of course. Look at it, absolutely stunning bird. Last night I'd have given it 10 out of 10. Tonight it might have lost some marks. Let's find out why. We know that one of the youngsters had hatched. We saw that, and here it is, looking quite strong and quite fit. And of course, as dusk came in last night, the male came in. You can see the white spots on the wing there, and he started to feed that youngster. Now, initially, they don't regurgitate a bolus of insects. They convert those insects into a type of soup, a milk, which they discharge it delicately into the mouth of the young. He didn't stay very long. He leaps up, and there you can see that youngster and the remaining unhatched egg. Female soon return after he left, settles down to brood and incubate. And it's not long before the youngster again is hungry, starts begging, and here, if you watch the throat of the female, you can see that she appears to be feeding, swallowing a bit of that milk she hasn't put into its beak there. So she appears to be feeding the chick at this stage. But here things change. The chick's begging, and it's not getting any food. She's clearly run out of food at this point. But as the night goes on, just before 3 o'clock, we see this. The second egg has hatched. You can see the damp youngster just broken out of the shell there in the foreground. she flies off and we get a view of both of those youngsters with the discarded shells in the background in the nest. And they're both looking okay at this point. Then she returns to the nest again. And of course, the idea would be that she would have caught more food to feed her young chicks. And initially, although she's facing away from us, we see this movement and we think, yeah, that's her, she's feeding that chick again. But then watch what happens next. You simply won't believe it. She begins the same sort of movement, but then she lifts her head and she's eating her own chick alive, and she swallows it whole. Now, today we've rung all the experts, we've asked all the people that we know that know anything about nightjars, and we've combed the scientific literature, and we can't find a single incidence of a female nightjar eating their own young alive, or eating their own young. What on earth could be happening here? We've all got our own theories. Go on, launch me with theory number one.
Well, first of all, I will say that we were, like you, so shocked when we heard that news this morning. We were definitely not expecting anything like that to happen. But I think there must have been something wrong with the chick. Although you would expect the adult, all that effort they've put into that egg and then that chick, you'd expect them to let it at least die first. And we've seen that with the kestrels, when one of the chicks did die and the mother fed it to the other siblings. But to feed on it live like that, it's just a complete mystery.
Animals seem to have a remarkable capacity to identify congenital problems in their young. So we do very often see young animals, particularly mammals, very rapidly abandoned, and then we discover, if we're able to, that there is something wrong with them. So that's a perfectly valid theory. The other thing is there's not a lot of food here. We've noticed a dearth of moths and butterflies and bees. Insect numbers seem to be down all over the country. Many people are reporting this on social media. Could she have just eaten it because she was hungry? It's unlikely. It's more likely that she would keep the food that she had herself, and again, the chicks would probably starve if there was a shortage of food. That didn't happen. I mean, the great likelihood is that we'll probably never know, but it's, you know, only through our cameras being able to observe these things at night that we've seen this remarkable, rather horrid occurrence. However, there is some remaining good news. Well, I say that. Here is the remaining chick, nestled beneath the feathers of its infanticidal, psychopathic, cannibalistic mother. And I'm sure it'd be perfectly safe there, and it'll be there tomorrow. I mean, there won't be any more problems, of course.
Let's hope so, because this really is becoming the series that just keeps shocking, isn't it? So, after that, let's just take a deep breath and go to our osprey nest, because they're a little bit more reliable, and this is a nest that's so far full of hope. We've got the 2 adults, we've got the 3 chicks. One of the adults is brooding there. And as I say, this has been a good nest so far. What has happened over the last 24 hours? You can release that breath, because everything is fine in the osprey chick nest. They have had unexpected threats. They've had plastic perils, they've had a slap in the face by wet fish, but now it looks like they're almost getting a bit bored in that nest, and they're beginning to wrestle each other. There's a bit of a head-butting battle going on here. That little one started it, but then as the bigger ones start stretching their heads up, it's too small to join in, so it turns around and just gets whacked on the head every so often. Adult comes in, tries to feed them, to distract them. That's not working. So she takes the food off and has it herself, and then look at this. They just kind of lose the energy and they just fall asleep. But we all know that feeling. You know, you're a bit bored in the car, you get a bit niggly, you start sort of punching each other
Just for the sake
and
of
getting a
it.
bit feisty.
Yeah, just for the sake of it.
Yeah, just all right.
Okay, all right, okay. Good to see that things are relatively calm in the osprey's nest. We introduced you to another new nest for this series last night, the tree creepers. We can go to that live now. Things not so good there. This nest is looking distinctly dishevelled, and that's because it's no longer got any young in it. What happened? Well, last night they continued to creep up the trees, as they're apt to do, of course, in search of insects to provide their chicks with. We knew that there were at least 4 chicks in the nest. There might have been more. So we were watching the adults out and about foraging, and they were returning to the nest to feed those chicks. All looked well. But we did mention last night that we'd frequently seen these nests predated by great spotted woodpeckers previously. Last night it wasn't a woodpecker that turned up, it was a grey squirrel. The mother scarpers out of the nest very wisely. The squirrel sticks its nose in. It doesn't seem to be able to sneak or squeeze beneath the bark. So the young are hiding in the base of that nest. The squirrel does nothing, leaves the young there and exits the scene. However, when we got up this morning, we saw this. The adult is coming in, the young are all gone. What could have taken them? Well, very sadly, we didn't have our infrared cameras on this nest, so we don't know. The squirrel could have come back in the early hours of the morning, principally a diurnal forager, or it could have been a nocturnal predator. It could have been anything from a mouse, that would have taken them, a wood mouse, or perhaps even a weasel. But whatever, the tree creepers really have a tough time, don't they? We see so many nest failures in this species.
We really do, don't we? Do you know, when we watch these nests, I mean, particularly this season, you wonder how anything survives, but clearly they do because they still continue on. And let's go to a bird now. This is a new nest, very successful bird, the collared dove. Look at that. It's a thing of beauty, isn't it? OK,
well, hold
the nest.
on. I'm not stroking my trousers here, I can tell you that.
Look at it. It's
my hands
calm,
are in my pockets.
It's relaxed, it's looking all sort of tranquil.
A pigeon in a shed? Come on.
I don't know, I like this nest myself. It's got 2 chicks, they're about 4 days old, and the adults are coming in and they're feeding it in a very different way to other birds because they feed it crop milk, and we'll talk about that a bit more next week. But as I say, this is a bird that's been so successful. It arrived from Europe in the 1950s, started colonising the UK. There were 4 birds in 1955. Then the numbers went up to 810,000 pairs. Numbers are beginning to decline now. What?
Oh, sorry.
I like it. Do you know, we've been arguing about this nest. I think it's great. So do let us know if you like the collared dove, and we're going to continue to follow it next week.
For anyone in the audience who slipped into a coma, let's look at another species that has colonised from Europe, or is in the process of doing so. Look at this. Now, this is a proper bird. Collared dove. Move over to the black-winged stilt. Longest legs proportional to its body of any bird in the world. And look, RSPB Frampton Marsh, a clutch of 4 eggs has just hatched. Sensational stuff. And this year they've appeared at 50 other sites. There are other nests, so we're expecting yet more broods of these birds to be out and about soon. So that might seem like good news, adding a species to our regular breeding bird list, but I've got to tell you, these are avian climate refugees. They've probably been driven north this spring because of the droughts in Spain and France where they would typically breed. So this is a sign of changing times, and not all of those changes are going to be positive.
We've seen so many changes, haven't we, in our lifetime, Chris? I mean, since we started the Really Wild Show presenting together all the way back in 1990.
Oh, it seems like 200 years.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. But, you know, what about the next generation? For people like Meg's, who's just the other side of the water on Swanage Pier, I wonder what sort of dramatic changes, Megs, you're going to see in your lifetime in the natural world.
Yeah, I really wish I knew. I mean, I'm 28 years old and I've still seen a lot of declines just within that period of time. And it's a problem we call shifting baseline syndrome. And it's essentially that every new generation gets used to the current environmental norms. So those species decline, that environmental degradation, it becomes essentially normal. So it's really important we look back into the past, listen to the stories, the books, the documentaries to figure out what was, so we can be a part of putting it back. But yes, I am here on Swanage Pier and it is a beautiful evening, and looking out over the water, it's a really gorgeous view. But I'm quite interested in what happens below the waves, because this structure was restored, it was built in the Victorian era and it was restored, and there are so many amazing species that live below it. Large schools of fish, everything from pollock to pouting. You've got spider crabs, hermit crabs, decorator crabs, you name it. But there is one species that lives out in the bay that I'm particularly fascinated by, and it's called the black bream. Now, this is a fish that comes in around Easter time in hundreds of thousands, and they swim around together before they then decide to make these amazing nests. But there it is there, and they are really intriguing animals, and this is actually some of the first footage ever filmed. This is from Matt Doggett and his team. It's really interesting to see this breeding behaviour because it really never has been seen before. And to tell us a little bit more about it, I'm really pleased to say we're joined by Matt now. Hello, Matt.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So tell me a little bit about what intrigued you about this species and why you've decided to start filming it.
Well, we first saw the bream from some chance encounters back in 2014 or so with my friends Martin and Sheila Openshaw, and they're a very shy species, and you don't normally see the fish in the water. So we sort of saw them there on their nests, and we got chatting, and we thought, hey, let's be nosy. Let's try and film them. No one's filmed them in the wild before, so let's put some remote cameras down and see what they do.
I like that. I like being nosy, because sometimes you have to be nosy to ask those kind of questions to figure out what on earth is going on a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
So we have a prop here of one of those black breams. I thought we could take a quick look at it. So here we have, I hope it's to scale.
Absolutely, this is Brian the bream.
Brian the bream, excellent.
Brian the bream.
So one thing I noticed, a black bream, but a bit of silver coloration going on.
Yeah, some might think that's a bit of a misnomer calling it the black bream. It spends most of its life this sort of greyish, silvery colour. But when they get very excited or very angry, just within a few seconds, they can turn from this to this.
Oh, yeah, look at
where
that.
they will literally go jet black, and the males will display these really quite striking vertical white bars on their body. And a female, if she changes colour, she'll have a horizontal white bar.
Right, okay, so some interesting kind of sexual dimorphism going on there.
Yes, yeah.
So we have this is a massive circle of rocks to kind of illustrate their nest that they create. It's like a moon crater almost.
Yeah, they create these huge craters across the seabed, and this is about the average size of one. You know, it can be 5-6 feet or so across.
Big.
And yeah, and this male, even one half this size, could build a nest this big within 24 hours. Just
Yes, look at it there. Look, oh, this is a male here,
Oh yes.
having a look at his nest, checking out his
Yeah.
handiwork.
Yeah, he's checking it out and he's keeping it clean there, a little tail waft. They're very fastidious and they like to keep their nest clean, and they also don't like intruders. So any other males that encroach their territory, they'll have a real good scrap with, take chunks out of each other and shoo them away.
Take a chunk.
Oh yeah, they'll bite lumps out of each other's fins.
Okay,
Yeah.
quite territorial then.
Yes.
So what happens when a female comes along with that kind of encounter?
Okay, so when the males have got his nest, his territory established, the females in the spawning season, they'll cruise around above the nest in these huge, great shoals. And if a particular female likes the look of a male's nest, she'll come down and she'll inspect it, and he'll very quickly turn black, as you can see here.
Yeah, look at that. It's very obvious there,
Yes,
isn't it?
yeah, and she'll feel the nest with her pectoral fins and her belly, and the male will swim around, nuzzling her, showing off his colours and really trying to encourage her to spawn.
But what I find quite interesting about this is that actually they don't always start off as male. All individuals are born gender.
Yeah, they're all born female, and when they reach about sort of 24, 25 centimetres, they'll start to turn to males. By the time they're 30 centimetres, they'll be male.
So they're going to go at both jobs.
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean, I was talking yesterday about seahorses, and obviously the males do a lot of the parental care there, but actually with this species as well, that happens too, in a different way.
Yes, so the male does all the work, making the nest and everything, and once the female comes down and spawns the eggs onto the nest, she'll go. She might spawn again in a week or so on another male's nest, but the male will stand guard.
Those. Really tiny, about 1 to 2 millimetres, is that
Yeah,
right?
really, really small eggs. And the male has to guard them against things like this. So there's a netted dog whelp there, and he'll spot that. He'll see a snail, and he'll come in and he'll pick it up. He'll go and spit it out in his neighbour's nest. How rude.
It's a bit cheeky, isn't it?
It
It's a bit
is,
like,
it
no,
is.
not here today. I mean, probably doing the predators a bit of a favour, which is quite cool.
Yeah, they'll keep everything out that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
They keep it really nice and tidy. You can see one here. He's ushering
Pushing out a ray.
Yeah, ushering it out of his area.
And
make
a
sure
crab
his eggs are
before as
safe.
well.
Yeah.
It's amazing how kind of ferocious they are, and I suppose they've kind of left these moon scrapes a little bit, which is actually changing the environment.
It does. I mean, they're ecosystem engineers, really. At the end of the season, these nesting grounds can go on for kilometres in some parts of the coast, and they leave all these bare areas of rock, which are open to colonisation by sometimes quite rare species of seaweed and things like that. So as their nests gradually cover over with sediment, you'll see all these circles of seaweed across the seabed, so you can see where the nests were.
Incredible.
Earlier in the year.
Well, black bream. Who would have thought it? Not me. What an amazing species that is. Right, thank you very much, Matt. Now, yesterday I was talking all about seagrass and the importance of that, but that's not just the case here in the south of England, it's also the case in North Wales too.
Absolutely it is, yes. We are in North Wales. We're on the Llyn Peninsula. It is our second night here. We've come down to a beautiful fishing village called Porth Dinllaen. Absolutely stunning spot. It's been very busy with holiday makers and beachgoers today, but it's quietened down. And now you can get a really nice view behind me of the bay. It sweeps around for about 2 miles and it faces into the northeast. So it's got a northeasterly aspect, which is very important detail because it means it's sheltered from all the prevailing wind and weather, and it creates a very sheltered bay for this important seagrass habitat. And stretching out underwater behind me is a massive seagrass meadow, underground meadow that stretches for about 46 football pitches. It's a huge area, one of the biggest in the UK, certainly one of the biggest in Wales. Now, last night, as Meg's mentioned, she was talking about seagrasses, the importance of seagrass meadows in climate change, and certainly she talked about the lengths that conservationists are going to protect these very important habitats. However, tonight we thought we would actually shine a light and spotlight the grasses themselves, the plants, their biology, incredible things. We've got a little tiny pot of seagrass here from a local display to show you. Now I'm just going to tease out these fronds and I'm going to dispel the first myth straight up. This is not a seaweed. This is a vascular plant. And this is very much like the land plants that you will see. It has an internal structure, xylem and phloem, to transport water and nutrients around it. So algae won't have that, seaweeds don't have that. It also gives it a very supportive structure as well. It allows these plants to have structure. So there's 60 species around the world of seagrasses. There are 2 species found in the UK, and the one found here is Zostra marina. So this is the common eelgrass. So this is what we have here in the bay. And they are flowering plants, so that's another very unique thing. Collectively, all seagrasses are the only flowering plants that are found in the ocean. So the flowers will actually bloom completely submerged underwater in the sea. Fantastic things. So if we take a closer look at the flowers themselves, they're quite interesting structures because they have male and female flowers on the plant, and they'll bloom in succession, a little bit like a relay, the male first, the female first, then the male, the female, then the male. And this is a way to avoid self-pollination. An assumption was made that the pollination happened by this passive process of pollen grains just drifting around in the ocean current. But then scientists found out that amphipods, little crustaceans, actually feed on the pollen grains, and they nicknamed them the sea bees, the bees of the sea, because as these amphipods go around feeding on the pollen grains actually stick to the body as well, and as they move around the seagrass meadows, it means they're able to pollinate the plants. And this is an absolutely amazing animal-plant underwater alliance, a little bit like the insect pollinators will pollinate plants on dry land. Well, that is also going on underwater. And without this alliance, there wouldn't be these wildlife havens, these seagrass meadows that support all sorts of other species. Now, things like pipefish, there are 3 species found in the UK, very much adapted for this habitat, blending in very well. Seahorses as well, we're very, very familiar with those in seagrass meadows, but they're also important for nurseries for loads of other fish. Sharks and rays will lay their eggs in these seagrass meadows as well. So very important habitat that, unfortunately, is disappearing and disappearing fast. It's estimated that 1 hectare disappears worldwide every single hour. And 90% of UK seagrass meadows have disappeared, half of that in the last 30 years. The good news is there are some really great conservation projects going on. One such project is Project Seagrass. They have done some incredible work. They trialed some of this restoration work here at Llyn Peninsula. Very labor intensive, gathering up seeds to roll them into balls, and scuba divers taking them down to the seabed and actually planting them by hand. So like I said, a very labor-intensive way of restoring these seabeds. Another very simple strategy as well, Hessian sacks filled with seeds tied into a garland, and these are deployed in suitable habitat. So really fantastic work in terms of being able to restore these really important habitats for all sorts of wildlife. And if you want to find out more about Project Seagrass, head to the Springwatch website. There's plenty of information about the really important work that they are doing. So from coastal habitats to an inland waterway where one of our most endangered mammals has found a very unlikely home.
This golf course in Kent isn't just pristine fairways and manicured greens. players here also have to navigate through the resident wildlife. With all the distractions, not every swing is on target. But at least it keeps the audience entertained. The rolling green fairways are broken up by ponds and dike-like chalk streams, and they're concealing more than just golf balls. An unlikely setting for one of the country's fastest declining mammals. Water voles, and they've been lost from over 90% of their former habitat. Traditionally favouring streams and rivers, this particular population has decided that the waterways of this golf course are above par. One reason why that might be the case is the abundance of watercress that grows here. Not only does it provide excellent cover, it's also very tasty. The banks are littered with discarded stalks, chewed at the water vole's characteristic 45-degree angle. But up on the fairway, the scent of something sweeter is in the air. Water voles have been recorded eating over 227 different plant species. But today, a discarded apple core will do just nicely. Water voles need to eat 80% of their body weight every day. And what goes in, inevitably, comes out. But not just anywhere. They have established latrine areas that mark the boundaries of their territories. So it's important that they're replenished during the breeding season. Water voles have been known to produce up to 200 pellets a day, weighing just over the equivalent of 1.5 golf balls. The long, rough grass bordering the fairways is designed to punish inaccurate golfers, but it provides important food and cover for the wildlife here. These golfers are focusing on the next hole, oblivious to the vole beneath the bridge. The vole, on the other hand, is well aware of their presence. Making a quick exit, disappearing in a cloud of sediment, there's nothing like covering your tracks. As the last of the golfers leave the 18th hole, the residents wind down for the evening. Our water voles can enjoy the waterways undisturbed in this most unexpected of sanctuaries.
Good to see those voles doing so well there. You into golf?
You'll only get me on a golf course if I can tick off a birdie, an albatross, a buzzard, an eagle, and the occasional
I wish
bogey.
I hadn't asked. I so wish I hadn't asked. I really do.
Golfing terms, apparently.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Top work, yeah.
Anyway, let's check in on another one of our live nests, perhaps one that's alive, shall we? Let's check in on the cuckoo, because I'm pleased to say the cuckoo is alive and well and growing. I'd like to say by the day, but it's almost as if it's growing by the hour. It's just getting bigger and bigger and spilling out of that nest. Still being fed a lot, that's why it's getting so big, with that massive gape that those poor meadow pipits have to keep filling We think this cuckoo is just over 2 weeks old, and we think it could actually fledge from the nest at the weekend. So if you're watching our live cameras, remember we're not on tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday. We'll be back with you on Monday. And by Monday, we might be able to give you the good news, fingers crossed, that it's fledged.
I've got a little treat for you now, though. Have a look at this. Dorset Museum has loaned us a cuckoo's egg. So this is an old egg from an ancient collection that's being kept there for scientific purposes these days. And this is symbolic of an evolutionary arms race between a parasite, the cuckoo, and its host, in our case, the meadow pipit. Now, clearly, the cuckoo wants its egg to stay in the meadow pipit's nest, and the host, the pipits, want to be able to spot it and turf it out. So one of the ways that the cuckoo achieves this is by having an egg like this, which is a very good mimic of the host species' eggs.
So basically, the cuckoo has to be an excellent mimic, and you'll see that in this nest. So this is a nest of a reed warbler, and those look exactly the same, don't they? But the bigger one is the cuckoo's nest, but it's similar enough to the eggs of the meadow pipit, of the tree, hang on, what is it? It's the, it's the reed warbler. It looks similar enough for the reed warbler parent to totally accept it. A little bit of difference, but similar enough.
Yeah. So how do the reed warblers in this case, or the host, when it comes to brood parasites like cuckoos, how do they fight back? How do they do that when the cuckoo is quite a good mimic of their eggs? Well, look, a little diagram here. We're going to attempt to demonstrate this. So the first thing that the host needs to do is to be able to replicate the colour and shape of its own eggs, like this. Because once it can replicate them, if anything comes in that's slightly different, like a slightly larger or mildly differently marked cuckoo egg, then it will be able to spot them. So, you know, what it's doing there is something really simple. It's a bit like me doing my initials, if I do them in a very simple block capital like that. But the problem with that is that you can't therefore identify your eggs as individuals if they're all identical. So what you want to do is be able to have your eggs so they're distinct. So here we've got, you know, the egg of this female, but this is the egg of a different female. And of course that means that if you pop into the wrong nest, you'll obviously recognise that they're not your eggs. But more importantly, it's going to make it difficult for the parasite, the cuckoo, to produce an egg which is exactly the same as yours, because it's got this little distinctive marking. And that, if you like, when it comes to my signature, is more me doing it in my handwriting like that. But even this isn't enough. What the host has to do is increase the complexity of the situation. It has to make it almost impossible for the cuckoo to be able to replicate the markings on that egg, because then it will be very obvious and it will be able to spot it. So what it effectively needs is a signature of its own. So here is my signature, there you go, and that is a squiggle that's going to be very difficult to copy, but it's replicatable and it's distinct, because I can do it time and time again, just like that. And effectively, that is what these hosts are doing. In order for them to be able to spot the cuckoo spot the cuckoo's egg when it's laid into their nest. The question is, of course, does any of this ever work? Do these hosts ever manage to get rid of the cuckoos forever? Well, there is some evidence that there is a species in the UK that's managed to achieve this. It's the spotted flycatcher. Now, we know that cuckoos used to lay their eggs into spotted flycatchers' nests, no doubt about that. But what scientists have found is that spotted flycatchers have a disproportionate ability to turf out eggs which aren't their own. Now, why would they have that capacity if they hadn't been previously parasitised by cuckoos? What's given them that ability to look at those eggs and then turf them out? And we think that this is basically the arms race swinging in favour of the host, in this case the spotted flycatcher, because they are no longer parasitised by cuckoos. Now, there could be other factors, it's just a theory, because we have seen a 92% decline between 1967 and 2020 in spotted flycatchers. So it could be that there are just fewer of them around. It's not worth the cuckoo specialising in parasitising their nests, but it's certainly a very good theory. And one other top fact for you is that Eurasian cuckoos still have brood patches, those in areas of skin on their chest which are engorged with blood to warm their eggs. But they don't warm their own eggs. So this indicates that they're only recently has this species become a brood parasite.
And I'm going to do a little quick summary on all of that, just to make it a bit simpler. So you're the reed warbler, I'm the cuckoo. So you do your signature. That's easy for me as a cuckoo to copy. It'll get in your nest.
Yeah.
And over time, you make it a little bit more complicated.
Yeah,
But
more
I reckon I can still do that signature.
Yeah.
Then it gets so complicated over time, it's the evolutionary race,
Go on then.
that I am going to really struggle to do that signature.
Yeah, thanks.
And so then you chuck me
My checkbook's secure.
You chuck me out of the nest and I get rejected. And then you win the evolutionary arms race. You like that summary? You like that
Very
summary?
good, very
okay,
good.
let's go from eggs to plants and join our resident botanist, Leif Sweden, who's going to take us into the secrets of forget-me-nots.
Now here in the UK, many of our wildflowers have hidden patterns that are visible only to insects. But some plants go one step further and actually colour code their flowers. Many of you will be familiar with forget-me-nots, those 5 sky blue petals surrounding a yellow ring. So once a forget-me-not flower has been pollinated, it stops producing nectar. It no longer needs any insects to visit it, so there's no point wasting energy in producing nectar for them to drink. But it doesn't stop there. To let the insects know that there's no more nectar, the forget-me-not changes colour. That yellow ring at the centre fades to white, signalling to insects that they're empty. The insects therefore learn that only the flowers with the yellow ring at the centre contain nectar. So they're encouraged by the plant to preferentially visit the flowers that haven't yet been pollinated, ensuring that no forget-me-not flower gets forgotten. Isn't that just brilliant?
That is brilliant, and who doesn't love forget-me-nots? Beautiful flowers, but we are here on the Llyn Peninsula. Earlier we were talking about the seagrass meadows just off here of Porthdin Klein, where we are right now. But we're going to now be looking at the UK species that live underwater, particularly a group called the elasmobranchs. Now this is the sharks, the rays, and the skates. There's a whole group of animals, absolutely fascinating and really surprising species found here. So things like this is a juvenile spotted cat shark, but also the nurse ray here, usually laying on the bottom of the floor, camouflaged. Now, all of these were filmed at a very interesting Anglesey Sea Zoo. Now, this is a very unique place. It's like an aquarium. And we have the director here, Frankie Hobro. We featured Frankie earlier in the week. Some amazing turtle rescue work that you're doing on tropical species washing up on the Welsh coast. But thank you for joining us now to talk about British species. Your sea zoo has that focus on British species. Would you say the UK is a hotspot for sharks, rays, skates?
It is, absolutely, yes. We have around 40 species of sharks in British waters. We have 18 species of skates and rays. And of course, many people don't know that they exist. They certainly don't see them, but they are out there. There's a lot of them out there, yes.
Well, it's a really good opportunity, obviously, when they visit your facility. People who don't go into the water, don't like getting into the water, they get more familiar with these. What would you say are the North Wales specialists?
So we have a lot of the sort of smaller species that live close to shore, the ones that we have a lot of on display. We also have, you know, the further offshore species. So we've got things like blue sharks, really kind of fast and exciting. Iconic as well species, so the really weird and wonderful angel shark, which of course is critically endangered now. It's incredibly rare. And basking sharks, you know, the wow factor, these huge fish, second biggest fish in the world, 11 metres long, no teeth, so nothing to be afraid of, but really incredible fish that we find just offshore here.
They are fantastic. Well, yeah, not just in Wales, but around the UK coast, so fantastic things. Now, Frankie, it's obvious you are really passionate. You've dedicated your life working with marine species, not just here in the UK, but around the world as well. You've returned to the UK, to Wales. Why do you think it's important to have this focus on British species at your sea zoo?
It's so important that people here know what's in the sea, because so many people aren't aware of what's in the sea. They might eat seafood or fish, see it on a plate, see it served up in a restaurant. But if they don't see how it behaves in the wild, and they don't understand about it, they won't help to protect it.
Yeah.
And particularly things like sharks, it's so important. You know, people have this innate fear of sharks, and we don't want them to have that. We want them to understand that, you know, sharks actually need protection. They're persecuted a lot all around the world, all different species. And if people understand them, then they'll help to protect them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you to you and the team for the amazing work you do. And definitely, as Frankie says, knowing what's in the water, knowing what species and how well they're doing is absolutely vital in being able to protect these species. Now, Project Shark is a project that's based here in Wales. Shark is shark in Welsh, as you'd expect, but it's also the acronym. It's Sharks inspiring action and research with communities. And they use the underwater equivalent of a trail camera with a little added incentive as well to attract these sharks to this baited camera here. Now, it's a non-invasive way of being able to survey the number of species that are found in the area. As they're recorded, attracted to the bait, they're able to identify these species and record and make a real concerted effort in being able to conserve them. There's another technique as well, which is sampling the water and looking for environmental DNA. So these are traces of DNA left behind by these sharks, and they can actually identify the species that are present simply because of the DNA in the water. Now, there is a species that hasn't been seen. Frankie mentioned it. That's the angel shark. We only know they're here because occasionally they get caught by fishermen or sometimes washed up dead on shore. Now, this is obviously a model of one, but it gives you an idea of the size of these things. They are bottom ambush predators. They have these barbels on the end of their mouths which detect vibrations of any prey, and they'll actually scoop them as they come swimming by. Now, last year, one of the team on Project Shark filmed for the very first time an angel shark in the waters in Wales. Now, this is the first time these have been filmed. This is filmed in Cardigan Bay. Absolutely privileged view of this species, and not just a privileged view, obviously a really, really important scientific record of this occurrence, that these species actually occur here in UK's waters, seen for the first time alive. So if you want to find out more about the work of Project Shark, go to the Springwatch website. There'll be information there for you as well. So from the Welsh coast to some of our smallest and remotest islands, which are important breeding posts for our seabirds. A month ago, we went to meet the team, a very dedicated team, working to protect these seabirds. And I have to warn you, it touches on the effects of avian flu, and there may be some images that some of you will find distressing.
My name's Maggie Shedden. I work with the Scottish Seabird Centre, and I guide on the Bass Rock and take people to visit the island. For the first-time visitor, it's magnificent. It is wonderful. It bombards all the senses when you come here, usually with the noise, the sound, the smell. It's a full experience. It has such a long history. Many people don't realise it was a prison, it was a fortress. It has religious connections. I'm in a very unique position. This is the largest northern gannetry in the world, and I've seen it grow. I think there's not a day go by I don't realise how special this is to land here. But I do have lots of chores I have to do. I've got the steps I tend to scrub them and sweep the path as well when I'm going down. We're needing a new handrail put up. Then biosecurity, I've got to go and check the monitoring boxes to make sure that there's no rats. It can be brought in by boats, and that would be devastating for a colony like this. So we just check them every so often when we're out. And it's nicely intact. There's no nibbles on it, which hopefully means we don't have rats. And if I can today, look for some of the study birds, but many of them are sitting on eggs now. You'll really only see this coloured ring when you stand up. So it's a bit of a challenge. So yeah, there's always work to do. I don't always get the time to sit and watch the birds. So when I do, it's wonderful. They're the largest of our European seabirds. They have a wingspan of just under 2 metres. The gannets have been here for centuries, but not in the manner that we've known over the last 25, 30 years. And the colony just slowly increased. It reached almost 150,000 gannets on this rock last spring. On May the 19th, this colony was perfect. By June the 1st, HPAI, avian influenza, was here. And I would say by about June the 30th, the colony had been decimated. It was virtually empty here. The actual virus itself, for the gannets, was truly devastating. These are strong birds that will intimidate you. They will take no prisoners if you go near them. They attack you. And last year, to walk on and suddenly find birds with their heads bowed, and you could literally walk up to them and you got nothing, no response at all. And I think for us on the rock last year, we were seeing them dying. We were seeing the carcasses around us of dead birds. But that silence, it was the silence. We didn't realise how much it took out of us. It was such a dreadful thing to witness. It's a heartbreaking virus that just seems to attack the nervous system of the birds. This year, the soil samples have been taken. We don't have avian flu on the island at the moment, as far as we know. The fact that we've got so many birds back this year is really heartwarming. And we've got so many breeding birds back, because at the end of last year, we had a handful of birds here breeding. This year, I think there's more understanding. We hope it won't come through again. The birds are on eggs just now. They're mating. I've been watching it all happen here. There's a lot going on just now, and hopefully we'll see the first chicks by June. So to come out now and see it like this, it's wonderful. It's a complete privilege just to be here. This is not a managed nature reserve. This place is really raw. It's hardcore, and it's up to us to really protect it as well and understand it. Even from last week, I'm seeing more birds have come back in. So it's positive. We've got to be positive and hopeful.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Maggie back in 2021 when I went to Bass Rock for the second time. And I have to say, of all the places in the UK, Bass Rock is one of my favourite areas. You step onto it and it's genuinely like you're stepping back in time, like it's a whole other world. So when 2022 came around and we saw that devastation of bird flu, it genuinely broke my heart, and it's really sad to hear what happened. But obviously, good news is on the horizon, fingers crossed. And there has been an update from Maggie. She said that lots of the sexually reproductive females have arrived back and they're doing rather well, but there are quite a few solo birds. So those birds could potentially be that they've lost their mate, they've lost their pairing, or perhaps they're entirely new birds to the colony that are just looking out for a new place to nest. That we really don't know. But hopefully the chicks, the very first chicks on Bass Rock this year, will be hatching in the next couple of days. So we have to look out for that. Some really good news, but researchers looking at the gannets in Bass Rock have found really interesting connection with bird flu and their eye colour. Now, we sent out our team to film this, and we got some really interesting shots. So Dr. Jude Lane and her team are in the process of publishing this paper. And if you look really closely at the gannet's eyes, they typically have blue eyes, but here they are turning black. And we really don't know why. Birds with black eyes were tested, and it showed that actually they did have some antibodies to the bird flu virus. So it's essentially saying that if they've survived bird flu, for some reason their eyes are turning black, and we really have no idea why. But it is quite a non-invasive way of identifying which ones have managed to survive and have those antibodies. For some reason, well, we don't know why it's happening, but they are doing rather well. It's not affecting their behaviour or their foraging or their breeding, so only time will tell what the long-term effects of that will be. Some really interesting research going on there. And whilst the gannets are doing better, other bird colonies aren't. So if you do see a dead bird lying around, please don't touch it. Report it to the BTO Bird Tracker and to DEFRA, and all information can be found on our website. We still need to keep our wits about us when it comes to bird flu. Now, I'm still here on the gorgeous Swanage Pier, some beautiful coastline, and this weekend you might wonder what the Springwatch team get up to. Well, we all went rock pooling, and I wanted to see what species are submerged in those incredibly harsh, fascinating tidal pools. And this is what we found. So we've got some amazing anemone life that goes on under there, a bit of sea lettuce, gliding pie. But what I was really excited about was this. This is a stalked jellyfish there. Fascinating animal. It's got 8 arms and 45 tentacles on each, and it uses those to kind of find its food. And here we've got a solar-powered sea slug. Yeah, solar-powered sea slug. And what that essentially does is eats the algae, and it gets the chloroplasts from the algae. Chloroplasts are small cells that enable the algae to photosynthesize, and they also make the algae green. But when the slugs ingest it, they use it themselves to harness energy from the sun, which is pretty clever if you ask me. But I'm not the only person that likes to stick my nose in a rock pool. I know many of you have done that as well. We were sent in this amazing footage of a common octopus in a rock pool, something I was quite surprised to see. This came in from Torquay, and this octopus was finding refuge at low tide. It's a cephalopod. It's incredibly intelligent, as all cephalopods are, octopus and cuttlefish and so on. But they are most common, seen in the south and west of the UK. And it must be warm in that tidal pool. Obviously, it's a shallow water, it warms up quickly in the sun. So when that tide comes in, I'm sure that octopus will go back out to the depths where you more commonly see them. We were also sent in this photo of the most funky sea slug I have ever seen. This is a nudibranch, and this is a rainbow slug. I mean, seriously, look at those colours. Chris would be quite jealous of that. If he saw that, it would inspire his next hairdo. But this was taken in Falmouth, and this is the first indication of this species in the UK. Typically, they're found in warmer climates, Spain and Portugal, for example. But really interesting to see how these species are coming across to our waters as the temperatures are increasing. Now, of course, there's lots of development going on in our coastal areas, so we're having to think of new ways to help our rock pool specialists. The University of Bournemouth in 2020 installed some artificial rock pools in Sandbank in Poole. They installed 45 of them all along. You can see them there. They almost look like sinks on the seawall. And they've been monitoring the species there. They found 65 species in the rock pool, where before, just in the walls, there were only 40. So those artificial rock pools are really helping the species that make their home here. Top work to Bournemouth University. Now let's go back over to Arn, where Chris and Michaela are. Chris, Michaela, have you been out rock pooling yet? And if not, why not? I'll take you out.
Funny you should ask that. Look, I've got my wellies on. That's exactly
well,
what
you're spilling the crabs. You're spilling the crabs.
Well,
Careful.
there's a nudibranch. Look at that. That's amazing, isn't it? And an octopus.
Oh, look at that. It's incredible. A couple of shrimps and stuff in
minutes.
there. Incredible, yeah. Right.
Last couple of weeks, we've been showing you a fantastic family of foxes up in Scotland that Jess McCaffrey has been filming with trail cams. So we thought we'd indulge a little bit more in this wonderful family. There's lots of cubs. Now, this is interesting because this is an adult with the fox cubs, but it's not the mother. It's not the mother that we've seen them with. This is another adult. First of all, we thought maybe it's the male, doing a bit of DIY on the den. And then we wondered if it was a female. Obviously, they're very familiar with it, so it could possibly be the mother's sister, just doing a bit of babysitting of those cubs. Again, though, adorable to watch the interactions of the adult, so gentle with those little cubs. And they've been really grown, haven't they, Chris?
Yeah, fantastic stuff. It wouldn't be unusual for a related female to come in. Foxes live in essentially female social groups, and they will help raise the dominant female's cubs. Sometimes, subordinates might give birth to a litter themselves, and that's when we see those really super litter sizes. But yeah, they are absolutely sensational. Look at that. And all of these interactions that they're having at the moment, I mean, if those are 2 females, 2 vixens, then there's a good chance that they could spend all of their life together. It's the males in foxes that tend to do the dispersal, and the females tend to stick around in those social groups. So they might be interacting in a way that's going to shape their lives for all of their lives. But what about that? Look, come on.
And all of that has been done on one trail cam, but recently she's put 3 trail cams out, so next week we'll be able to show you those fox cubs spreading out a bit. Now, I've got a question for you. What's your favourite colour?
Orange.
Mine's yellow. Do you know why? It's bright, it's cheery, it makes me smile, reminds me of sunsets. Talking of which, let's go to Mark, who's given us a... Oh, wow! Look at that. Isn't that... remarkable because that's right now. I mean, that's live. He's obviously on the other side of the reserve when the sun is just dipping, and that is absolutely glorious. And I think that's put us in the mood for a mindful moment, which features something rather yellow and beautiful, a dandelion. If I had a dandelion seed head now, do you know what it'd tell me? It would tell me we've just got time to show you some fabulous photographs that you sent in. I think you'll agree, these are brilliant. These are Carrie Calvert near Carlisle. And look, she got these two stoats, not just being stationary, but fighting or possibly playing with each other, but action shots. And apparently she had to hide in the bushes to get those pictures.
Nice light too.
Nice light, we like that. We like that.
Okay, it's the end of our week here. What could possibly be coming up next week? Let's go to our live nest. Let's take a look at our buzzards. We've seen lots of bullying in the nest. Will that youngster survive the weekend? What about our barn owls? 4 youngsters, 1 more egg to hatch. Could be the runt of that brood. The cuckoo. Will the cuckoo fledge? My money's on that. Look at the size of it. Absolutely massive. And then lastly, our nightjars. Will that little fluffy chick still be here on Monday?
There's only one way to find out, and that's to join us. But what else have we got? Megs, what will you be up to?
Well, I'll be helping surveying a really great population of bats that make their home here.
And I'll be on Anglesey, Wales's largest island, to see one of its most charismatic inhabitants.
What a week it's been, though. So many surprises on our live nests. We've had our osprey chick slapped in the face by a wet fish. We've had the nightjar eat one of its chicks alive. Will anything be alive next week on our live nests? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to join us at 8 o'clock on Monday, and also to watch our live cameras that are on from 10 till 10 all over the weekend as well. But it's a fine weekend, so get out, enjoy the wildlife, send us some pictures to the normal Facebook and website
But
addresses.
not collared doves. We don't need collared dove pictures.
I'm going to enjoy those collared doves, and we will catch up with them on Monday and all our other nests. So we'll see you at 8 o'clock. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. What can you do to make a difference to nature and the environment? Well, sometimes big changes come from small actions. The Open University explores simple but effective ways to make a positive impact. To get inspired, go to bbc.co.uk/Springwatch and follow the links to the Open University.